Hi, Vivian. Thank you so much
Hi, no
for
problem.
joining me. I thought it was really important to get feedback on people who have done significant work in dialogue to help the next generation, to help others. And it's very exciting times for dialogue, as you also know. There's a lot of excitement about large language models. And I keep saying, like, dialogue is an important topic for humanity. And I think this proves, because everybody, like a lot of people, are trying to write or build dialogue applications with the large language models and tools that are given out there. So I thought it would be good to have some discussion, kind of like an interview. And yeah, thanks again for joining. So, what do you think about these large language models? And given all the examples that we see out there, that people trying, are we close to, or have we solved the dialogue problem with these large language models? What do you think about the status of the work? Yeah.
Mm, from my perspective, I don't think it solved all the dialogue problem, but definitely they solve part of the problem and make us to achieve more. For example, I think previous approaches usually we tackle the specific task, and during the dialogue scenario, and the user can only say specific things, and this is not flexible. So I think the current approach, like large language model, they can tackle more diverse input, and hopefully it will be more flexible for human and more human-like conversation. So I think this is the first achievement I want to mention. And I also think because a lot of problem they focus on specific task. So how to transit from the general conversation into specific task is also another issue we want to tackle. I don't think the current approach already solve that, but definitely they try to do that. For example, we can call the external API to ground the knowledge, or book the ticket, or something like that. But actually, how to do this transition and when to do that is also very important.
Mm.
As I remember, last year we have the ACL paper, which is about a little bit like the advertisement in conversational interface.
Mm.
So we want to detect the implicit intent, like the people do not explicitly mention what they want, but they say, oh, this place is really good, I never visit that. And we know that potentially these people may want to travel there. So we can gradually guide the customer to purchase some like flight or a
Mm.
hotel. So I think this is also very important. And I think there's possible to do that using this large language model and make better.
I
So I
see.
think
I see.
this is the very important part.
I see. No, you raised very good points. Like, for example, if you just talk about knowledge all the time, it would be quite boring, right?
Yeah,
Like a
yeah, yeah.
know-it-all dialogue system doesn't know anything besides that, besides the knowledge. And then also guiding users towards things that they may want, being more proactive from the model's perspective, giving them
Yes,
initiative, but also taking the initiative to make suggestions.
yes. And also I think another important thing for from large language model is about the common sense. They know a lot of common sense. So
Mhm.
previously it's very difficult to tackle this kind of common sense.
Mm.
So this give us some opportunity to do that.
Mhm, mhm. That's true. That's true. Yeah, it's actually have seen amazing examples of these
Right,
models
right,
showing common
right.
sense reasoning. So, in your opinion, uh, what has been the main focus from the LLM community with respect to dialogue systems? So, uh, there are problems. So, in the dialogue community, for example, we focus on like task completion, or we have focused on social interactions or chit chat, like engaging conversations, and it's kind of like similar in the language, but are there in the language modeling community? But are there things that have been that you have been finding interesting, things that we haven't been thinking about before, could be useful for dialogue in general?
I think that we find it interesting. One part is for evaluation. Like
Mm-hmm.
the large language model current can give very good evaluation, very similar to human perspective. And in
Mm-hmm.
dialogue, I think one difficulty is that we do not have very good evaluation. So we
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
need to have some automatic one, but actually, like automatic metrics always are not perfect. So I think large language model is the one way to give us some more human-like and also automatic in
Mm-hmm.
order to use for other learning learning objectives.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I mean, dialogue, like evaluation of dialogue, is one of the main obstacles, right, that we have
Right.
been facing so
So
far,
our
even
group
even
also
for task
surveying
completion.
this part. Yanting is
I see.
surveying this part. They evaluate the conversations using previous like
Mm-hmm.
human scored and also compare with the large language model score.
I see. I see. And and how does it look? Promising?
Yes, it's very
Mm-hmm.
promising, and it approach to human
Mm-hmm.
scored compared to all other automatic metrics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think it's
And
very promising.
I see. And what are some things that you feel it would be good to focus on, like from the language modeling community? So there has been, these are very good ideas, but what are maybe the biggest issues that maybe not being um, paid attention in the new literature so much, in your opinion, things that we have been maybe focusing on for some time in dialogue, but
Um, from this part, I do not have any idea.
Mhm, mhm.
Mm,
Eh,
would you have
that's
some, or we can discuss then?
mhm, mhm. um, I feel, for example, like some things that I think could be issues is like having control, but at the control at the level of the dialogue, right? Like, because if you're building a dialogue application, be it an application like a product, or be it an application that you want to have um, for some other purpose, you may want to have some more control over like
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
system is supposed to say next. This, I feel like there isn't really enough attention to that. The control at the level of the response, there is that literature certainly, but at the level of
Oh, right.
at the level of the dialogue, I don't see too much work along those lines, which I don't know. I think about it. Could be an interesting topic to tackle. How do you do
Right.
that with
I
large
think the
language models?
current controllability is for like you can suggest some options and they just select one from them.
Exactly, exactly.
Right. But for the whole like natural language, probably it's more difficult to control. And there's
Hmm.
also some hallucination or
Hmm.
some inconsistency. It's also
Hmm.
important.
True, true, very true. Because, like, for example, if I was the application owner, if I may want to double check once people give their credit cards, I may want to double check the credit card number, or I may
Mm.
want to double check with them, like, are you sure that you want me to charge it, rather than just going ahead charging? And then if you accumulate all of these things, it becomes like really large. And these may be domain specific, these may be task specific, maybe not covered, and they may not scale to include in the prompt. Right, because depending on the application, they may be just too many. So these are the things that I'm thinking, but
Right. I also think
yeah,
so.
yeah.
And probably another one which I do not see a lot is it's like continual learning. Like during
Hmm.
this interaction, the agents themselves can also learn more and adapt their behavior because the current part is that we just collect this conversation and have some feedback and just do reinforcement learning for
Hmm.
learning this feedback. But I think learning can be in knowledge part more, right? For example,
Hmm.
if we already know that this is the hallucination, incorrect hallucination, and the user correct this part. And I think the agent should be able to learn, oh, in the next time they don't need, they know this is the incorrect part, they can automatically correct by themselves. I think it's possible, but I don't think much work about that.
I agree. I agree. And these are all important issues. So what do you think? Like, I think you gave a very good example, because before, earlier in the earlier literature, we were kind of like thinking different types of dialogue systems, but like for natural interactions, these language models serve a good purpose, in the sense that like you may slightly shift from the task, and then they may still be able to generate an answer, or you may jump into a task and then they, from a social interaction, they may be able to. So maybe like that boundary between, which I was hoping for a long time, like people really don't know different types of dialogue systems.
Right.
So that boundary is kind of like closing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So what do you think about like for task completion? Do we still need like tasks like language understanding, tracking, dialogue state tracking, or do you feel like now like everything is end-to-end, so we should focus on more end-to-end approaches? What is your suggestion, like especially like given the tasks that are out there, dialogue tasks that are out there?
I think we still need the that component, but that component can be implemented by large language model, because we still need to call some API, right? So we need to know this API form, and the API form have some constraint. So we still need to extract some like intent and also slots. But this can also be in the pipeline, multi-step large language model querying. Like this is try to generate the API call based on the understanding format. And if we get that, and we can query the database, and after we get the result, we can put it in the like the prompt and generate the next step. But so it also pipeline scenario, not that end-to-end, but definitely we can have some reward to feedback the whole models.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with you in the sense that like people do change their minds throughout the interaction, and then but the language model can do this form of tracking, or they're changing their mind there more explicitly, and then be able to interact with the backend resources based on whatever is the most recent, most important thing that the user is looking for.
Right. And also because the reason is that as a human, like the call center agent, they also need to check some external tools in order to accomplish this task. So definitely that should be exist.
Yes. And then maybe a follow-up question to this. So should we then use like these language models as a black box and then do mainly like post-processing or probing? Or look, as a community, shall we seek for open source models that we can like fine tune to these specific tasks, even for the purposes of like these interim tasks that we are discussing?
Definitely, I think if they have more open source large language model, it will be better, because we not only we want to fine tune that, but if we have the distribution of the output, they can we definitely can control it more, or do some manipulation more. But if we only allowed to use API call, then we only have the token level, and it's not that rich for a lot of purpose. But for industry or some company, small company perspective, they just focus on how to use that. So I think if the usefulness and they are easy to use, probably it's also good. So I think the research part, they can also focus on if we just treat it as a black box, how can we do that? And if we have the large language model and we can fine tune it or have more diverse or distribution, how can we do that? So we can tackle different things in research side.
Yeah. I agree on that as well. And one thing that like we were discussing, like what is missing in the literature, and then as you were mentioning, like if we can see, um, like I feel like now we do have opportunities to do like way more applications than just like simple, um, maybe like more applications related to multiple users, which haven't really been uh, kicking off that well yet. And so this will bring in like other issues, like speech recognition errors and so on. Like maybe for the, I don't believe that the whole problem is solved yet,
Yeah.
but especially if we go to more challenging cases, it becomes like more accurate. It like becomes easy to see that. Uh, what do you think about that? Like, what are some things that could be possible, um, or that we should be as a community focusing on related to speech?
Definitely for robust speech recognizing and for robust understanding part is also very important. And our group also tackle this part a lot. And for multi-speaker scenario, I think not only for speech part, but also for like understanding like the culture or some interperson
Mhm,
relationship is also important because um, the agent not only interact with the target people, they also perceive these two people are communicating. So they,
mhm,
as a human, they may perceive, oh, what's their relation and what kind of maybe sound or like we it's better to do. So I think there's more complicated and also include a lot of human computer interaction part, not
mhm,
only for the technical part. So I think we definitely need to collaborate more from HCI's area and
mhm.
try to have more like human like and maybe better user experience scenario. I'm not the expert for that, but I think this
Mhm,
definitely a very big issues.
mhm. Yeah, interesting. Like the social dynamics between the participants, if there are multiple human, that would become like way more important because now the machine is in the interaction.
Right,
Yeah,
right, right.
yeah.
And also in speech scenario, another part
Mhm,
is also important is that what is the good timing
mhm,
to speak? Because the current which is
mhm,
two people and after we finish this turn and it's your turn, but in multiple agent or human and
mhm.
agent, it's need to design the good timing to jump
Yeah,
in the conversation.
yeah. That is very true. Like, and we have seen this, especially in the pandemic days. It's even a challenging task for humans, right? Like when two people are having a conversation, you're trying to contribute to the interaction, like when to take the turn,
Right, right,
and then
right. Turn taking, even though for two people is also important, but it's not easy to do that in the text interface because if
yeah.
after I click enter, then just your turn.
Exactly, and then you have time to figure out
Right.
what to say or yeah, how to continue the conversation. So what are some other messages that like it that would be good for me to cover that you would like to give to the machine learning community, like related to dialogue and the future of the dialogue? Or maybe I can form the question like what are some questions that you would ask if you were interviewing me in that sense? Am I missing anything?
Um, I think they already cover a lot of things.
Mhm,
And what I want to, I also, I'm also interested in like the specific like professional domain, how
mhm,
to incorporate that kind of like knowledge. Or I'm not sure, should we tackle that as a external knowledge, or should we
mhm,
also do pre-training on that
mm.
domain specific things? I
Mhm,
think
mhm,
probably both, because for example, for a lawyer, definitely they know some technical term, and but for the complex things, probably they still need to check some reference book.
mhm,
So
mhm,
how to better incorporate that
mhm,
domains may
mhm,
be very important, but which is not it's not easy to tackle by like the research
Mm-hmm.
part because we are not the expert for different diverse domains.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think definitely we need to have some data, benchmark data, in order for us to
Mm-hmm.
approach that area.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Like there is need to now actually now that the the technology has evolved, that there are new tools. If we do, like, I'm not complaining. We have had for the past 10 years, I think lots of like new dialogue corpora coming out. But I
Mm.
do feel like you in the sense that there probably we do need some new data to be able to study these problems. Like would you do knowledge grounding, like knowledge retrieval and grounding, or would you train or fine tune on that new data set, or lots of new issues that are coming up. That's
Right,
right.
and also one part I also want to mention is that the current large model do not do some personalization, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely they can do
Mm-hmm.
that. And how to do that is also very important. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's also related to like advertisement part.
Mm-hmm.
If we
Mm-hmm.
know you better, probably we can
Mm-hmm.
customize the response better, and maybe I can promote some product for you
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
I see. No, no, that's a good point. I actually was thinking about it long time ago, but I wasn't thinking about it in this context. Then that's actually a very good point. Uh, like one size doesn't fit all, right? Like in conversations, everybody is
Right.
different. Everybody has different needs, and they want to. Yeah, yeah,
Right,
that's a
and
very good
also
point.
for example, as a if you have a human assistant, you will assume previously if we mention something, they should remember. Then
Mm-hmm.
next time they definitely know don't need to say it again. And
Mm-hmm.
if we treat all things in the history in the prompt, it's not possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
we probably will also have some personal knowledge graph, and the
Mm-hmm.
learning model can query that in order to get some personalization.
Mm-hmm. And then personalized responses
Yes,
exactly
yes.
based on that to make yes. Uh-huh. Yeah, so I may actually, after the call, ask you for some pointers to papers, like on each of these things that we discussed.
Sure, sure,
Things
sure.
are popping up in my mind, but I would really appreciate
Sure,
if
no
there are
problem.
some good things that, like, oh, we shouldn't forget to mention this. Okay, so great. Thank you so much.
No problem, no
And it
problem.
has been a pleasure to talk to you again. So I'll stop the
Yes.
recording.
And I also want to